The U.S. sends aircraft carrier strike groups to take over the West Philippine Sea from China. An incensed China has targeted the U.S. for deploying its Navy's U.S. Carl Vinson carrier strike group in the South China Sea and West Philippine Sea. Chinese Communist Party's mouthpiece, Global Times, fired verbal shots at the U.S. from the shoulders of two Chinese maritime analysts, claiming the U.S. Navy was no match for the anti-carrier warfare capabilities of the People's Liberation Army. The Chinese experts quoted by Global Times claimed Beijing commanded military superiority in the Western Pacific, where American carriers are vulnerable to long-range missile strikes. The experts, as expected, slammed the U.S. for the provocative move of Carl Vinson carrier strike group deployment in the South China Sea, and the West Philippine Sea, claiming that it was aimed at stoking tensions with the Philippines. Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, Japan, and the Philippines have contested China's territorial claims in the South and East China Seas. Chinese and Philippine Coast Guards have challenged each other over Manila resupplying its naval unit at Renai Jiao, also known as Renai Reef, by sending materials to reinforce an old warship that ran aground there years ago. Tensions in the Western Pacific have been unprecedentedly high, with all three flashpoints of the Korean Peninsula, the Taiwan Straits, and the SES being active, with confrontations between the U.S., Japan, Taiwan, South Korea camp and the opposing China, Russia, North Korea grouping. The flotilla conducted maritime security operations, including flight operations with fixed and rotary wing aircraft, maritime strike exercises, and coordinated tactical training between surface and air units. The CSG's presence in the SES and the subsequent exercises are part of the U.S. Navy's routine presence in the Indo-Pacific. Besides the carrier, the CSG consists of 5 guided missile cruisers and destroyers, including the Ticonderoga-class U.S. Princeton, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers U.S. Hopper, U.S. Kidd, U.S. Sterett, and U.S. William P. Lawrence. Before entering the South China Sea, the CSG participated in a trilateral maritime exercise with the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, JMSDF, and the Republic of Korea Navy to conduct enhanced planning and advanced maritime communication operations. Pictures released by the USN also showed the U.S. Carl Vinson firing an Mk-15 Phalanx Gatling Gun Close-in Weapon System, CIWS. While China strongly reacted to the American fleet's presence, its experts downplayed the naval maneuvers, saying they served a more symbolic and political goal rather than a concerted military intent. A Global Times report quoted Chen Xiangmiao, director of the World Navy Research Center at the National Institute for South China Sea Studies, who said, U.S. aircraft carrier activity in the South China Sea is nothing new. Such moves usually attempt to deter China and show support to U.S. allies so that the U.S. can consolidate its hegemony. He said while U.S. carriers still operate in the SES, they tend not to stay for too long, because the U.S. Navy understands the Chinese military's capabilities in targeting large moving warships on its doorstep. This significantly reduces the survivability of aircraft carriers, he said, adding that thus USN carriers in the SES serve more as political and diplomatic tools than actual military instruments. Meanwhile, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs slammed the Philippines for provoking the conflict by trying to control the disputed area and changing the status quo. MFA spokesperson Mao Ning said the face-off between the Coast Guard vessels was caused by the Philippines' change of policy and position, and violating the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. We hope that the Philippines returns to dialogue and consultation and work with China to handle and manage the situation at sea properly. This statement came a day before the Global Times article on the Carl Vinson CSG deployment. The MFA spokesperson did not mention the U.S. in her reply to a question on the Philippines maritime dispute. The U.S. Navy's former Indo-Pacific Command Chief, INDOPACOM, Admiral Harry Harris, told the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2018 that American vessels were at a disadvantage before China, with its ground-based ballistic missile that threatens our basing in the Western Pacific. His successor, Admiral Phil Davidson, concurred 3 years later in 2021 while discussing China's missile tests. These mid-range, anti-ship ballistic missiles are capable of attacking aircraft carriers in the Western Pacific, Davidson said about the DF-21D. Former U.S. Marine Corps officer Robert Haddock, who was then a visiting senior fellow at the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, told Reuters in 2019 that it is a huge gap, adding, China's anti-ship missile capability exceeds those of the United States in terms of range, speed, and sensor performance. If weapon performance is insufficient, logistics to sustain a long-drawn conflict is another handicap. The U.S. Marine Corps Assistant Commandant, General Eric Smith, called this capability gap a dirty little secret in a Stimson Center webinar reported by Eurasian Times in 2022. The U.S. logistics are fledgling, and it has no means to sustain a lengthy conflict while China can. We cannot rely on big, heavy platforms to be loaded on a strategic lift on 30 days' notice, while we shuffle our way into support. Force Design 2030 makes the problem less since it relies on lighter, mobile, smaller forces, Smith said then. While a wargame in 2020 conducted by the think tank RAND Corporation repeatedly ended in devastating U.S. and Taiwanese defeats, another wargame by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, in 2022 resulted in the U.S.-Taiwan victory, as Chinese amphibious warfare capabilities were found to be lacking compared to the American capabilities to counter the invasion.